Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Marriage Motherhood Podcast. This episode is covering something that is a basic building block, and that's self-care. So I'm going to be talking about how self-care really impacts your marriage, but really every single relationship, if I'm being honest, right? So if you don't know, I help unhappy moms who feel lost in their marriage to be happy again. And a lot of times we get to that place of feeling lost because we're no longer getting our needs met anymore. And if you have that go-to coping mechanism of stepping into victim mentality, you might ask yourself, why aren't they being your partner, doing that anymore? Why aren't they giving me what I need anymore? Why did they stop, right? What happened here? And what we really should be asking on top of that question is, what have I done to get us here? Not from a place of blaming, but from a place of awareness. What part did I play to get us to where we are right now, right? Because it takes both of you to get there. And here's the thing, right? We tend to feel lost in our marriage because our partner stopped doing something. And why did they stop doing that thing? Because we stopped being the person that they married, right? We are all supposed to change over time. And sometimes that change isn't intentional. Sometimes that change isn't positive or in the direction of growth or in the direction of connection, deepening the connection with our partner, right? And so naturally, if you are no longer the person that they married and you're like this shell of a person, it means that you've lost yourself. And if you stop being yourself, your partner may have lost the motivation to do what they used to do earlier on in your relationship. Okay. So I'm going to share with you my experiences of losing myself because I feel like all moms can relate to this. I feel like we've all gone through those moments where we feel like we've lost ourselves to motherhood because it is such a normal part of the journey. And while it is normal, I don't want to give you license to be like, oh, well, I'm just going to stay like this. Okay. Because normal does not equate to something that serves you. Right. So you're going to get to know me and my background a little bit right now. So I actually started out as a stepmom before becoming a mom. When I first started dating my husband, he already had a 1-year-old from a previous relationship. And so when we decided to date, it was very much a conscious decision where, okay, well, there's more at stake than just us, because if we didn't work out, we could just break up. But now we have a child who is involved. And so we had to really speed up how we thought about things. We experienced more relationship maturity quicker than most relationships, I would say, because there was more at stake. And so when I became a stepmom, or even before we got married, but once I stepped into the role of stepmom, I said to myself, I'm going to be the best damn stepmom ever. Right. And in that process, while well-meaning, I didn't realize that I started passing on parts of me. I started sacrificing parts of me in an effort to be a quote unquote good mom, right? So I stopped saying yes to going out with my friends because we were now in a different phase of life, right? They were very much still partying, shopping, doing all the things. And I felt like, well, that's not aligned with what a good mom does. So I need to say no to those things because that takes away from family time, right? I stopped teaching yoga because that happened during family time. I stopped practicing yoga because that happened during family time. So as you can see, I was very responsibility focused, right? If it didn't have anything to do with work, the house, or the family, I didn't do it, right? And so over time, I started losing myself with every decision I made, every no I said that really made me me. And I became more and more irritable, more and more impatient. And I really started to see myself like devolve. But I didn't realize that was what's happening. I just assumed like, oh, it's normal to like lose your shit on your child because they pushed you too far, because they're not listening, because this, because that. And so I normalized it and basically gave myself permission to just accept that that was a tough season in my life, right? Fast forward some years, I then got pregnant with my son. And when he was born, I went through the newborn phase for the first time. I had milk production issues. And with that came its problems and struggles, right? Like back then, fed is best was not a thing, right? So my mind went to, well, I'm supposed to breastfeed my son. And if I do not, I'm not being a good mom. And so I spent a lot of my time and a lot of my energy judging myself and doing everything that I could to increase my milk production levels. And so when I wasn't nursing, I was pumping, and it was just like a full-time job. I literally felt like a cow, not in a good way. Okay. I was not a happy cow. And then, other than that, my son was also allergic to sleep. He would nap for 20 minutes and he would take 2 hours for me to put down at night, every single night. And I just like lost myself even more in that process. I didn't feel well. I didn't feel like sane. I was sleep deprived. I was even more irritable than before. I would snap at my husband. I would probably pick fights if I'm being really honest too. And I would just lose my shit so much more often on my older son, on my husband. Everything just seemed so awful in a time where, they paint in society that like motherhood is like all that in a bag of chips. And I was like, this is not all that in a bag of chips. This sucks. Like, why do people do this? Right? This is so hard. I feel like I'm just like this empty vessel to take care of this child. And I don't feel like myself anymore, right? Like I stopped brushing my hair. I stopped caring about how I dressed. I stopped doing things for me because that was no longer a good reason. It had to be to serve the family. It had to be a good mom. It had to be, to do something for my marriage. It was never just for me. And so I felt really like isolated because I didn't really hang out with my friends anymore because a lot of them didn't have kids yet, or some were like having difficulty conceiving. And so, me having a child was triggering for them. And so it was just a really hard time for me. And so it wasn't that like I woke up one day and just decided like, I'm going to lose myself, right? It was not a conscious decision that I made. It was in the tiny decisions that I made every single day that led me to that point. And what it created was someone who is overwhelmed, burnt out, and unhappy, right? And when I realized that I lost myself, it was in the moments where I was like, wow, I am feeling more disconnected from my family than I feel connected. I'm fighting with my husband more when before that was not really a thing, right? We would have our disagreements, but we wouldn't fight. And it wouldn't get to that level where it was like escalated. And I felt like, what's happening right now, right? It didn't feel like us. And I was showing up as like the mom, AKA like momster that I didn't want to be. So I was really unhappy with myself. Like I wouldn't want to spend time with myself if the tables were turned, right? I would not want to be with me. I would not want to be the child of me. And it was just a really rough spot. And so it was from that where I realized just how important taking care of myself was and how it impacts all my relationships, right? My relationship with myself, my relationship with my husband, my relationship with my kids. And to be honest, my recent birth, by recent, I mean 2 years ago, actually, at the time that I'm recording, her birthday is this Saturday and she's turning 2. So yay. But anyway, her newborn phase was the first time that I truly was able to take care of myself and the child. And so that felt like a massive win. And it's so, so different. Like the experience of raising her has been significantly, exponentially, positively better than the other 2 times that I was taking care of young children. And I really attribute that to prioritizing myself. Okay. So let's talk about why women put themselves last, right? It's not like we're like, okay, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do that. Because if that were the case, I don't think anyone would have kids, right? You don't like marry your husband and just like, okay, I do. And just FYI, like, here's the fine print. When we have kids, I'm going to be so different in a bad way. And you're going to hate me. And I'm actually not going to prioritize you at all, right? No, that's not what happens. And why we tend to put ourselves last is because what happened, right? We learned this from our parents, more specifically, our moms or our female caretakers, right? In that generation, martyrdom was so, so big, so big. It was like, if you put everyone else ahead of you, you are a good woman, which is complete bullshit, right? If you have a clean house and obedient children and appear perfect, everything is all good, even though you're miserable inside and you don't care about your own happiness and you just suck it up. It's like, what kind of life is that? That's a terrible life. And so it is their sacrifice and that mentality that has gifted us this amazing thing called mom guilt. Sarcasm, right? I hope you noted that one. But becoming a mom does not have to mean the death of your womanhood. I hope that if you take away any message all from this episode, it is that, right? It is that you as a woman still matter and have always mattered. All right. And not only that, but like, okay, so if we put ourselves last, where does our partner fit in? Right? How do they fit in? Because when you're comparing a baby versus a grown adult, of course you're going to be like, oh, the baby needs me because they're defenseless and they need me and they literally can't do anything without me. Whereas your partner's like, you got it. We'll be okay. You know, like we'll reconnect when the baby's older. We'll reconnect when the kids are, more independent. We'll reconnect when the kids move out and we have our house to ourselves again. Right? Like, but that's banking on the assumption that your marriage connection can actually sustain waiting, that it can actually sustain being put on the back burner for that long. Like, would you sign up for that? If the roles were reversed, let's say you were the dad or you were the other parent, and your partner was like, hey, when we get married, I'm going to put you on the back burner for 18 years when we have kids. Okay. Thanks. Bye. But we don't do that, right? And so here comes like the piece of self-care, right? Who you are as a partner is highly determined by how much you take care of yourself, right? When I don't take care of myself, and I still fall into this from time to time, right? Because society, I am really not the best person to be around. I'm cranky. I nitpick, I criticize, I get passive aggressive. I am not transparent about my needs. I pick fights. I blame. I do all of the things that you're not supposed to do, like all the things that are bad habits that I've picked up and reinforced over time. And that really create disconnect rather than what you actually want, which is connection. Right. And so when I'm that version of myself, of course, my husband's like, disengage, disconnect. I don't want to be here around you. It's way more stressful than it is enjoyable. Let me know when you're back to yourself. Right. And so if you think about it this way, and also like how you are as a mom when you don't take care of yourself, when you're fully depleted, then there's only one thing that you can really like come to accept is that self-care isn't actually selfish. It is actually in service to your loved ones, right? So taking that time to yourself to rejuvenate yourself, whether it's sleeping in, whether it's going out with your friends, doing things that don't have to do with the family, while it means spending time away from them, you got to do what it takes to be the best you possible, right? So let's talk about what self-care is. I feel like a lot of times, like when people talk about self-care, they just immediately be like, oh, nails and hair and retail therapy. But self-care is actually just the act of taking care of yourself. And so if that's the intention of taking care of yourself, you got to ask, what do I need to do to take care of myself? How do I feel taken care of by myself? Right? And so the examples I gave earlier, the nails, the hair, the shopping, all of that is amazing. Don't get me wrong. I thoroughly enjoy a massage, right? A 90-minute Swedish massage, sign me up. But the benefits of that quickly fade, right? Once I go to bed and wake up the next day, I'm like, oh gosh, another day of this, right? And then before I move on to share, what things actually have longer lasting benefits, let's cover why moms don't do self-care in the first place, like other than mom guilt, right? They're like, oh, I don't have time and energy, right? Yeah, I get it. We're busy as hell. We have so many responsibilities to meet. We have people to take care of. But you know what I hear when someone gives me those excuses? I am not a priority to myself. Or I love other people more than I love myself. How's that feel? How's that feel to say that about yourself? Like if you're to look yourself in the mirror and be like, you're not a priority to me, guaranteed that would make you have waterworks. At least that would for me, right? Would you say that to your daughter? Don't be a priority to yourself. Love other people more than you love yourself. Like you wouldn't do that, right? But here's the thing is that not all things that we do drain our energy. Like time is time, right? Things take time, regardless of what we're doing. But energy-wise, some things actually give us energy. Like for the example, going to the gym, right? We're like dreading it, we're dreading it, we're dreading it. And then when you go and you come back, you're like, yeah, I feel amazing. I have so much energy. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. And it just has like this positive result in you. It has a positive benefit. So here are examples of how you can take care of yourself in ways that actually have longer lasting benefits and build off of each other if you do them consistently. So number one, easy peasy, your health, right? Getting enough sleep, hydrating, eating nourishing foods, moving your body, like exercise, right? Then there's things like prioritizing your joy versus responsibilities. And what does that look like, right? It looks like, what do I value in life? And scheduling the rest of the stuff that need to happen around that. And even questioning your responsibilities and be like, do I have to do this? Or do I just feel like I should do this because this is what my mom did? Or this is what I think people need to do in order to be a good mom or to be a good housewife, et cetera, right? Really questioning that and working with your partner to make sure your schedule for how things run in your day as a family support that. So like if family connection is a priority, then prioritize that. Make everything go around that instead of, oh, here are my responsibilities. Everything else gets like fit in somehow if I could find the space, right? It's really about making things a priority, making time for what's a priority, not finding time. Notice the difference, right? It could be like doing things for yourself, like going outside, getting some sun, going to hang out with friends that really support and uplift you. It could look like turning your passion into a business, right? And then there's things that self-care also counts as, but is uncomfortable, but necessary. It's the unsexy work, the stuff that we want to avoid because we didn't witness our parents doing it, such as feeling your feelings versus suppressing them. Oh, I don't have time for this shit. I don't have time to feel it. And then you just don't even make time to feel it, right? I get that it's inconvenient sometimes to like go through your emotions, but make time for them, because when you don't, they can do some damage to your body, and your body keeps score. Like that's actually a book, but your body keeps score of all the suppressed emotions, all the traumas that you've experienced, small and big. And if you don't deal with it, it's going to keep coming up in the most inconvenient ways, right? In your relationships, in you saying no to things that you really want to do, your self-worth, everything. It just like really fucks shit up in your life. It just really fucks shit up in your life. I don't recommend it. Then there's reparenting yourself, right? Learning to really love yourself in the way that you wished you were growing up because your parents didn't know how to. Learning how to take care of your nervous system, like, oh, I feel activated. What does that mean? And being able to really tend to that and attune to your needs and your feelings so that you can respond in a conscious way in your relationship. Then there's setting boundaries, right? With yourself, with other people, right? Keeping your promises to yourself, speaking kindly about yourself, like telling yourself to release relationships that are more toxic than supportive, right? You don't need to keep being friends with people who are not a positive influence on your life just because you've been friends with them for a million years, right? It's okay to outgrow people. People are sometimes in our life for seasons, and sometimes they're lifers, right? And that's amazing, but not everyone is meant to be in your life forever. Sometimes they're here to teach you a lesson about yourself or to help you expand, right? Clearly communicating, like that's a huge part of setting boundaries as well, making it clear what you're okay and what you're not okay with, advocating for yourself. So those are some different ways that you can practice self-care that isn't so like surface level attractive, but have really, really lifelong positive impact on you and your experience of life, right? Well, what happens when you don't take care of yourself, right? What's the impact on you? What's the impact on the family? What's the impact on your marriage? For me, it was very much like hating myself, losing my shit often, feeling disconnected from my husband, feeling disconnected from my kids. It's not something I wish on anyone, but I know that I'm not alone, right? And then on the flip side, what happens when you do take care of yourself, right? What's possible then? Literally anything. You love yourself. You're kind, compassionate, patient, fun, flirty, playful with your husband or your partner. You're connected with your kids, right? You can play with them. You're patient with them. You are taking time to really guide them to be the kind human being you want them to grow up to be, right? So the question now is, what do you desire out of your life as a woman, wife, and mom? Right? Really take a second, close your eyes and picture it. And hold on to that picture, that vision, to help you carry yourself through to actually being committed to taking care of yourself. Like that's what's at stake. What you envision for your life as a woman, wife, and mom, that's at stake. And I want you to decide from that place, not from, oh, I'm tired. I don't want to. This is too hard. I'm uncomfortable. I'm afraid, right? You can do that, but only if you're willing to give up what you want. Okay? Only if you're willing to give up what you want. I really hope this episode helped you out to reignite your worthiness to take care of yourself, to ask for support, to be able to take care of yourself. Because I know, like, you can't just ignore the kids, especially if they're young. But sometimes it does take support, right? Maybe it means having a conversation with your partner or having a conversation with your parents and being like, hey, can you do XYZ so that I can, do this for myself, right? You deserve it. The woman in you deserves it. And just go take care of yourself, okay? Literally everyone will be happier for it. And we need you to be happy, okay? You are out there breaking a cycle of sacrificing moms, and let's end that, okay? Let's be the generation that chose to love ourselves most and really set the tone for the next generation to be like, oh, I know to do this because I was shown how and because I was taught how, right? We didn't get that, so let's be it. I hope you have an incredible day, and I'll see you in the next episode.